It's your voice, your vote for Oregon's first congressional race. Tonight, KATU News, along with the Independent Party of Oregon, present the first debate between the Republican and Democratic candidates in that district.
And good evening. Thank you very much for being with us, everybody. I'm Steve Dunn. Democrat Suzanne Bonamici and Republican Rob Cornilles face off tonight in an effort to win your vote for the first congressional district of Oregon. They're competing for David Wu's vacated seat in a special election that takes place on January 31st. That district covers 5 counties: Clatsop, Columbia, Washington, Yamhill, and a portion of Multnomah. Now, both candidates are also vying for the nomination of the Independent Party of Oregon. Let's meet the candidates now. Suzanne Bonamici, she was elected to the Oregon State House in 2006. In 2008, she became a state senator for District 17. During the 2011 legislative session, she served as the chair of the Senate Committee on Redistricting and was on the Education, Judiciary, and Consumer Small Business Protection Committees. Bonamici volunteers for the Classroom Law Project, the Beaverton Education Foundation, and several theaters. Rob Cornilles is the owner and president of Game Face, Inc., which is a training and career placement company specializing in sports marketing. Cornilles serves on the board of directors of the Oregon League of Minority Voters, Special Olympics of Oregon, the Japan-America Society of Oregon, and other nonprofit organizations. He's also a volunteer for the Boy Scouts. The Good Neighbor Center has coached for 16 different youth teams. Tonight, we're joined by a panel of 4 esteemed journalists who will ask your questions tonight. We have Steve Bagwell, the managing editor of the McMinnville News-Register. Next, we have Patrick Preston, political reporter for us here at KATU News. Sitting next to him is Teresa Myers, reporter at the Hillsboro Argus, and John Schrag, publisher and editor of the Forest Grove News-Times. Thanks very much for being here today. We really appreciate that. Before we begin, we do have some ground rules for you. The questions were developed by our panel of professional journalists. Some questions were sent to us by you, our viewers. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. Then they'll get 1 minute to answer the same question from our panelists. Now, the first candidate to answer each question will get 30 seconds for rebuttal. At the end, each candidate will get to make a 1 minute closing statement. Before this program, we drew names to order, and we begin with Suzanne Bonamici. Suzanne, your 1 minute opening statement, please.
Thank you. Thank you for giving Oregonians an opportunity to learn about us this evening. This election is about 2 things: priorities and trust. First, priorities. Congress has them wrong. In a time when our debt is increasing and too many people are looking for work, Congress is giving tax breaks to millionaires and sending the bill to seniors and middle-class families. And instead of ending tax breaks for big oil companies, they're threatening the education of our students. Right now, we need trust. And trust is something that the voters in the 1st Congressional District deserve. They deserve a representative they can trust, and they deserve to know where we stand on the issues. Now, I've spent my lifetime standing up for consumers, for middle-class families, and for small businesses and education. Those are my values, and you can trust that my values have been consistent. I'm not running to be somebody. I'm running to get things done, to build our economy, to advocate for education, and to protect our seniors. That's what Congress needs right now.
Ms. Bonamici, thank you very much. Rob Cornilles, your 1 minute opening statement, please.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you to KATU and the Independent Party of Oregon for hosting the event, and I also want to thank my fellow candidate, Senator Bonamici. My name is Rob Cornilles, and I want to be your voice in Congress. I was born in Portland and raised in Washington and Yamhill counties. And 25 years ago, I married my high school sweetheart, Allison, and in 1995, we started a business out of a spare bedroom in our Tualatin home. So I know a little something about job creation, having employed 60 people in that time and also helped more than 500 people launch careers around the country, especially young people. Throughout my life, I have really admired certain Oregon leaders like Mark Hatfield and Tom McCall and Vic Atiyeh. And now I'm motivated to follow their statesman-like examples and represent the best of Oregon. So tonight I look forward to sharing with you my views of how we together can create more jobs in Oregon, as well as end the terrible partisan gridlock in Washington, D.C. Tonight I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Cornilles, thank you very much. And now comes the questions. And to do that, we start with Steve Bagwell from the McMinnville News-Register. Steve, you direct your question to Suzanne Bonamici to begin with. Thank you.
Well, Suzanne, your opponent here mentioned job creation. I'd like to ask you both, starting with you, how you think we could best go about retaining and creating middle class, family wage jobs in America? And if you would be, please be as specific as possible.
Absolutely. Well, first we need to get Congress back on track, because they're not doing the job that they were elected to do. Americans need jobs, Oregonians need jobs, Congress needs to do its job. What I will do is actually support infrastructure projects that will get people back to work on our infrastructure, our crumbling roads, bridges, electrical grids that will help our renewable energy industry. And importantly, I will also be continuing the work that I did in the Oregon legislature, helping small businesses get access to capital so that they can create and grow jobs right here in Oregon. In fact, the work that I did in the Oregon legislature, more than half of those loans have gone to small businesses in rural areas across our state. So we need to have a multifaceted approach where we're getting people back to work on infrastructure, helping small businesses get access to capital, and also strengthening our education system. Let's get Congress back to work.
Rob Cornilles, the same question for you, sir.
Well, as a small business owner who's employed many people, I know something about this subject. First of all, we need terrific tax simplification in this country. There's no reason why mega corporations such as GE should make $14 billion in profits last year and have zero federal income tax obligation. That's because we have a system that's full of loopholes, it's full of deductions that only the mega rich, whether you're talking about individuals or corporations, can take advantage of, because they have lawyers and armies of accountants and lobbyists and friends in high places. This is hurting job creation here in Oregon, especially among small businesses. We also need to focus on what we do well in Oregon, and that is we produce products and services that the world wants. We need to be very aggressive in getting those products out throughout the world. This creates jobs here in Oregon. But if we don't take advantage of our assets and the great innovation that we have here, then we are going to see a continued stagnation of job growth in this particular part of Oregon.
Suzanne Bonamici, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal if you'd like it.
Well, what I'd like to say is what Congress needs now is a representative who actually has experience crafting policy that's led to jobs across the state of Oregon. I have that background in helping small businesses get access to capital they need to create and grow jobs. I have a long career of working and helping people, small businesses, both as an attorney and as a legislator. Let's get our small businesses and all Oregonians back to work.
Our next question comes from KATU's Patrick Preston. You'll direct it to Rob Cornilles, Patrick.
Rob, you just brought up tax simplification, and I wanted to ask you about the subject of reducing the deficit. You have mentioned tax reform. You have said that that would bring in more taxes if some of those loopholes are closed, but you have not advocated the kind of tax increase, the rates on the wealthy that Senator Bonamici has advocated. Explain your position on raising taxes on the wealthy and how it really differs from your opponent.
Well, you mentioned that we have a deficit. Right now, it's $1.3 trillion. It's the second highest deficit in our country's history. If we were to incorporate all of the tax increases that are being proposed on the super wealthy, that would lead to about $100 billion in new tax revenue. Now, we're still at $1.2 trillion in deficit. So that's not going to fix the long-term problem. I believe we need to raise revenue by creating more people who are paying into the system. In other words, we need to create jobs. If you grow the economy, if you raise revenue through creating more taxpayers, then fewer people are dependent on the government services that are also raising our deficit. So we can cut and we can raise revenues by putting more people back to work. It's a very simple equation, but obviously in Washington they don't get this because there's not enough people in Washington who've actually created jobs. And that's why I feel I'm a unique candidate in this election.
Suzanne Bonamici, the question is yours.
Yes, we absolutely need to work on reducing our deficit and doing that by getting people back to work. But we have to have a balanced approach. We can't cut our way out. We can't tax our way out. And it's going to be a long-term solution that my opponent offered to get people back to work and have that deficit addressed and our debt addressed. And what I think people need to know is I have proposed solutions in the Independent Party questionnaire about what we can do, making sure we have targeted cuts, making sure that we get rid of tax breaks on millionaires. And my opponent didn't check any of those alternatives. People need to know where he stands on raising revenue or where we're going to cut. We have to have a balanced approach to get out of this situation that we're in.
We have a 30-second rebuttal for you, Mr. Cornilles.
Well, the super committee, which proved to be not so super, argued the same old things that we've been hearing about for a decade. How do we raise taxes? and how do we cut expenses, or how do we cut spending? The problem is that not enough focus is being spent on job creation. What would motivate entrepreneurs and investors in this state especially to actually invest and take risk and add jobs? And if we continue to take a piecemeal approach, we're only looking for the next 12 months as far as tax reform. My opponent wants to defend a system. I want to fix it.
Next question now comes from Teresa Myers from the Hillsborough Argus, and your question's for Suzanne Bonamici first.
Suzanne, sticking with the economy and job creation, how would you begin to address the disparity, the growing disparity between wages and benefits from the wealthiest wage earners to the lowest, and how would you define a family wage job here in the state of Oregon?
Well, thank you. What do we do about income disparity is a great question, and we've talked about it a lot these past couple of months. First of all, we need representatives in Congress who won't cut programs like Head Start. Education, public education, is the great equalizer. And if we can have those opportunities and early intervention for all of our students, even students from poverty, they will become wage earners and the next entrepreneurs and job creators of tomorrow. We also need to make sure that we have policies that encourage people to start businesses. And that comes from a good system of public education where we're reducing the amount of standardized testing. We must change No Child Left Behind so that our students today are becoming the job creators of tomorrow. We need to have partnerships between our businesses and our community colleges and colleges to make sure that they're getting the workforce that they need. A living wage job in Oregon is one where a family can support itself and make sure that they have what they need.
Rob Cornilles, question's yours.
Well, during this Thanksgiving weekend, I'm sure a lot of people saw their kids and grandkids come into Oregon to visit them, and then they leave because there's better opportunity elsewhere. Well, I'd like to see my kids come to Oregon and stay and grow a career here. How do you do it? You make sure that we get rid of crony capitalism. That means that we don't allow politicians, especially those who've been in the system for quite some time, career politicians as they're called, we don't allow them to pay back favors to those who've supported them. In other words, we create a more even playing field for everyone to prosper and to grow and to have opportunities even here in Oregon. This is why the Occupy Wall Street movement, people understand their frustration, their despair. They've been promised so many things, and yet they see only the big high-end earners on Wall Street making the kind of salaries while everyone else is struggling. We need to create an even playing field. That means lower the tax rate for all, including the middle class, and eliminating loopholes that only the powerful get to take advantage of.
Suzanne Bonamici, you have 30 seconds if you'd like.
Economic fairness is something that I've been working on my entire career. I worked my way through community college, college and law school, helping low-income families at legal aid. I took on the mortgage industry, fighting mortgage fraud before there was a financial crisis. What we need in Congress is someone with that kind of experience who knows how to craft policy that leads to equality and economic fairness.